Hello.
Hello.
Hello?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good.
All right. So this is our first attempt at a webinar. So please bear with us. We seem to be going technically good. So if anything goes wrong, please bear with us. But so far so good. Before I get started, I have an agenda that probably will take about 30 to 40 minutes, I'm guessing. Before we get started, did you guys have any specific questions or concerns that you wanted to address before we get started? All right, so I'm going to take that as a no since I haven't seen anything. If you guys want to contact me, please type in chat and I'll just go ahead and get started. So the way we're going to log into PriceGuidePro, we're going to go to the dealer login, and then I'm already logged in, so it brought me right to the home page or the dashboard. And today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the search box, search settings, and effective ways to find things based on the data set that the PriceGuidePro has access to. So the first thing is we'll just cover the basics about the search box. Essentially, the search box is the single place where you can put all of your inputs in. You can put a part number, which could be a motor state part number, including our 3-digit vendor code like ALL 14100, and that will lead us directly to a specific part number. We can do a partial part number search, including the motor state vendor code, which will give us a family of parts. It's a starts with search that will find all of the parts that starts with the search criteria. Another example would be MSD 64, for example. And we'll get all of the parts in that family of part numbers. We can do the same search without the motor state vendor code. We'll go back to the 14100 example. And in this example, you may had in mind the all-star part number, or you may have had the nitrous oxide, the NOS part. Without putting in a vendor code, obviously the system doesn't know which brand you're thinking of, so you may have to do a little bit of digging to get the specific part that you want. There is a way to isolate by brand, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. You can also do a partial vendor part number, which we would do ALL 141, or just 141, for example, and hit search. And that's going to give us a broader range of part numbers, all start with 141, but again, there's going to be other brands mixed in. Preponderance of them are all-star parts just because of how many parts are in that series. But you can see that we also have all of these other brands, All-Star, Aeromotive, ARP, so on. Okay. I can also do keywords in the search. I can say roll bar pad, just do a search, and I'm going to get it that way. So that in a nutshell is the basics of the search bar. We're going to come back to that and talk about the suggestive search and some other techniques or some strategies for effective search. But before we do that, I would like to talk about the search settings, which is something that we haven't talked a lot about. I don't know that there's any other real documentation other than the help inside PriceGuidePro. So for those of you that are longtime PriceGuidePro users, you're used to seeing the brand list like this. And the brand list, we limit, for performance, we limit to, I don't know what the exact number is, but you have to hit a show all or see all to get the entire brand list like we used to display. We've gotten some, I don't know if complaints is the right word, but some questions about that. When we designed this search, we really didn't design it for you to scroll through the entire list of all the manufacturers. We designed it to be a starts with search based on the brand name. So basically, if you're trying to get a brand, like say for example, you're trying to find XXX, you would simply start typing the brand name as it's spelled out with letters, and it would eventually limit the results until you get to what you're looking for. We base the search on the brand name as opposed to the vendor code, because if you already know the vendor code, you don't need this search. You simply, inside the search box, type a vendor code. If the search criteria matches exactly a 3-digit vendor code for motor state, and I'll show you what it looks like, you get a result set that is limited to just that brand, and we present the part numbers instead of any relevance from a search criteria, we present them in alphanumeric order based upon the settings that you have set up, which we'll go into more of that later. It's interesting to note that when you do a brand search, you get a brand box like this, which gives a little explanation of what the brand is. It tells us if there's a MAP or a UPP, which is a unilateral pricing policy. It tells us if there is Prop 65 warnings that are required. So if you're selling online, that's an important thing to know. And it also tells us if the manufacturer gives us an inventory feed. Now, since All-Star Performance is owned by Interstate Distributing, we don't have an inventory feed because we show everything that they currently have. There's no inventory other than what we have, I guess is what I'm saying. But if we do a search for MSD, for example, you'll see that there clearly is a notification here that we are getting an inventory feed from the manufacturer, which will show up in the search results for products that that MotorState is out of, and or if you order more than we have in inventory, say we have 2 in inventory and you need 4, when we present you with the back order option page, if there is an inventory feed data, it will be displayed there. Okay. So putting the 3-digit vendor code is another option in the search box. That is the brand list. Now we'll talk about the history. The history is pretty straightforward. The history stores up to 100 search results. This is the use case here would be you get a phone call from somebody that wants to look up a part. You spend some amount of time finding that part for them, and then they say, okay, I'll call you back. And 15 minutes later, half an hour later, an hour later, whenever, they call back and they're like, okay, I just talked to somebody about a part number. I want to go ahead and find it, but they don't necessarily remember the specifics. You can go back in and dig that out of your search results, and hopefully that'll make things easier for you. Search settings, this gets a little more complicated and there are a lot of different components related to it. So you'll notice on the screen that inside the search settings, which I access this by my little ice cream cone menu or the 3-dot menu, whatever you want to call that, I have show search results for all stocking on top and stocking only. You'll also notice that on the left-hand side, I always display the same thing. And some confusion has been garnered over this. The way it works is the setting result inside the search setting box is persistent and will be the way all searches go initially forever until you change the search setting box. Okay. The settings on the left-hand side of any given search result will affect those search results, but not the next search. So, for example, I can set my default generic search results to be all parts stocking on top, and I'm going to say apply changes. So now if I do a search for MSD6, for example, I'm going to get a list of parts, some of which are hopefully non-stocking. And there's some non-stocks in there. So all parts stocking on top. That means all the stocking part numbers are listed and then the non-stock parts are at the bottom. This is going to force the non-stocks to the bottom of the list regardless of the relevance that they have towards the search. If I switch my search results to say all parts, I may end up with non-stocks in a much higher position. And here's a good example of one that's been superseded. In this case, the non-stocks are considered as just generically part of the search results, and they land wherever they would as it relates to the relevance or whatever search criteria you're using to display them, the sort by. It defaults to relevance. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But changing my results over here will alter the specific search set or search result set. And then when I do my next search, we'll call it MSD5, it will go back to my top level or my search setting box default, which was all stocking on top. And then again, I can change this search result to just stocking only or whatever I want. And it will alter the display on the page, but only for this search result. The next time I do a search, it's going to go back to the results based on the search setting box. Global setting, search related setting. So the next item on the list is Do not display discontinued parts. We keep discontinued parts in the catalog of parts in PriceGuidePro for a very specific reason. They do cause confusion from time to time, and sometimes they clog up the search results to the point that people will say, hey, I wish I couldn't see those. This is a way to do that. There are some exceptions to this. If the search results that are generated by a specific search only include discontinued parts, we will overlook this setting and we will display those results. However, if a part has been discontinued and this box is checked, it will not show up. This will cause confusion occasionally, especially if you're unaware that a specific part has been discontinued. So anytime that you cannot find a part that you know you have purchased in the past, typically this is the area that can cause confusion. So if you purchased a part 3 months ago, it's subsequently been discontinued, you do a search for it and you cannot find it, it's not in the search results, but you're getting other parts, it's important to check this right here. Maybe if you uncheck it, it will make that part visible. If you put the exact part number in, and assuming that it's not grabbing any other results, like there's not a -1 or a -10 version of that part number, for example, it will, if that's the only result set, it will display it regardless of that setting. So you can sort your search results by the following. I personally am not aware of anybody that has changed their default to anything other than relevance. And again, this works the same way as the show results for the sorting order. Basically, this is going to be your global setting, and then you have the ability to change your search results for a specific search based on the one that's on the screen at the top. So for example, if I did a search for, let's just do piston. If I do a search for piston, I'm going to get a great big result set. And I can sort by any number of things. If you're a person that likes to sort of sort through by part number, you can ignore the relevance and have them displayed alphanumerically by part number and vendor code. A lot of times I think customer wants the cheapest thing that'll work. You can say, okay, I'm going to sort by suggested selling price, low to high. And obviously in a discontinued situation, we don't have a selling price, so it's reading that as 0. And if I use that in conjunction with stocking only, for example, I'm going to get results that look like this. And I'm going to get a bunch of piston rings. So there might be some specific cases where you want to sort by different things. You can also sort by your cost, low to high. So if you're working on a project, you're not necessarily selling a part directly, you're just trying to find something to suit an application or a project, you can find the cheapest thing based on your price or suggested selling price. Okay, back to the search settings box. Show brand info box at the top like we did for our ALL example and MSD earlier. If you would rather not have that box take up space at the top of your screen, you can turn it off, and you do that here just by unchecking or checking the box. You can adjust the amount of search results per page. Again, everything in this box is going to be persistent across all searches, and the boxes on the screen after search results have been displayed are going to be specific to that search. In this particular case, there is no search result number on the screen, so only the search box results are going to cover for it. Search results view. The view that we are in right now, we have called expanded, or what I would call regular, normal view. This is the typical view that people use. We also have included compact, which is going to allow you to get more search results on the page. The trade-off between getting more search results on your page is that certain information is going to be lost. For example, if we go back to expanded view, we have a series of boxes on the left-hand side that give us additional information and options to do in a search. For example, if we thought the image for this part was wrong, we could quickly hit feedback and tell MotorState that we thought there was a problem with the listing, whether it was an image, description, whatever it was. That is not available in the compact view. For those of you that have used PriceGuidePro long enough to remember version 7, which was the version prior to this, it had a much different view. And when we transitioned from PriceGuidePro 7 to the online version or the .com version, there was a fairly significant subset of dealers that missed the familiarity of the view that they had in that old Windows-based application. Rather than try to get everybody to come on board right away, we actually built a view that's very similar to the way it was in the old version. So I know for a fact that there's a handful of dealers using this view. I think there's some advantages to it. A lot of it's just based on your preference. So that is available if you want it, and you can get to that. You can set that in your search results, or your search settings in here. And then there's the two last things here are prompt for line memo when I add lines into my carts, and prompt for line memo when I add items into my lists. For those of you that don't know, a line memo is a line level or a part specific note that is not designed to tell MotorState something. It actually travels all the way with your order and will show up on the invoice. So a good use case for a line memo is if you're going to, say, place an order for multiple customers of yours, you could put the project, the internal project PO or name on the line item, or you could put the customer's name and phone number on the line item, and then when the box arrives and the parts are pulled out along with the invoice, you have information for whoever's receiving those parts directly right out of the box. They can say, oh, this is for Mike, and this is his phone number, and they can call Mike and let him know that those parts are available. The same thing is true for lists. Now, lists are not necessarily going to be ordered, but they can be turned into orders. So you can add notes for your own internal use to lists as you see fit. And we will talk about lists in another webinar, another video going forward. So that is the basics of the search box and the search settings, okay? So now I would like to talk about some specific search examples and some of the things that we've tried to do to make searching easier, given the fact that we know across the 650 something vendors that we have incomplete data at times, which makes it more challenging for you to find things. So the first thing that I think it makes sense to discuss, and I think something that often confuses people as we talk to them, is the suggested results, this little box that appears underneath the search box when you start adding things. So basically, this is a pretty common database-driven e-commerce search function, but it can be confusing. So the idea here is that we are trying to figure out what you most likely are looking for quickly at the search box level. So the first 3 items that we display are typically part number hits that we think are likely to be what you're looking for based on the criteria that you have started to search. The next 2 are based on the part number that the system thinks that you're looking for, it's trying to find the 2 best matches for categories. Part numbers, categories, and then we do it by brand. See all is going to do exactly the same thing as clicking search on your search box. And I still have it in table view. I'm going to go back to expanded, which is my preferred method. So as I start to type something, let's type something else. Let's type the word piston. So it is going to give me the 3 part numbers that, based on all of the different search criteria that the Elasticsearch engine has, it thinks that those are the 3 most likely part numbers, the 2 most likely categories, and the most likely brand. Okay? Sometimes people report that they believe they have to select something out of this list. You do not. You can ignore it, and you can either click see all or just click the search box. So if you don't see something in the suggestive search results that is helpful to you, simply ignore it and click on the search box. And you'll get that search result. Okay, so let's move on to a little bit more advanced search criteria. And I've got three specific searches that I'm going to do, and we'll demonstrate a variety of techniques that we've already discussed on how to refine search results to get what you're looking for. So one of the first things that you can do is you can leverage categories. So let's say, for example, that I have a customer in front of me that wants red roll bar padding, but I don't remember what red roll bar padding is, the part number, but I do know that the black number, All-Star, is 1014100. So I'm going to find this part, and because it's a stocking part for MotorState, it has been signed a category by MotorState. If I click on the part number, I'm going to get to the detail page. The detail page is always going to list what we call breadcrumbs at the top in this area up here, and those breadcrumbs are the level 1, level 2, and level 3 category. The categories go from the most broad or generic down to the most specific, almost a part type, not quite to the part type level, but close. So in this particular case, I knew the black roll bar padding number, so I get to it, and then once I'm there, I can click on the level 3 category breadcrumb in order to see all parts that are in that category. So at that point, essentially, it's going to perform a new search, searching for the category of roll bar padding, but ignoring my initial search criteria. And in this case, I can easily find the red roll bar padding right here. And then I can add it to my cart or quote the price or whatever it is that I wanted to do. So if you can get to a specific example of the type of part that you're looking for, you can go to the product detail page, click on the breadcrumb for the category, and find all the parts that we've put in that category. So that's sort of one use case that you can leverage the categories in order to find the parts that you're looking for. Okay, we also have search within a search, and we have brand and category level limiters on the left-hand side. So let's do a search for main bearing Ford. Okay, so we're going to get results here, and we are going to get 355 results for main bearing Ford. That's a lot of results. So now, oh, excuse me, I did it wrong. We can limit that even more by using the suggestive search. If I do just a search for main bearing Ford like I just did, it's going to weight each one of these words separately. Collectively, they are going to get more relevant, so you're going to see the main bearings like you'd expect at the top, but you're also going to get, as you get down the list, you're getting to get into things that have nothing to do with main or bearing, but have the word Ford in them. And the results might be not exactly what you were thinking. If, on the other hand, you say, I want to select main bearing Ford in the category of main bearings, you're going to be restricted to the category and main bearing Ford. That's going to get you much closer as a starting point. So if you already know what you're looking for and the category presents itself in the suggestive box, we recommend that you use that. If the category doesn't appear, then you can use the first method that I told you, where find a stocking example of that part and then go to the product detail page and click on the breadcrumb, and essentially you'll start kind of in the same spot. So right now we've got our search for main bearing Ford in the category of main bearings. Okay, so but that isn't detailed enough, or that's not specific enough for us to find what we're looking for. So let's say, for example, that we are interested in the engine family, which we refer to as small block Ford. Okay, so I'm going to look at, or small block Chevy or whatever. In this case, I'm going to say a small block Ford. It's important to note that when we write the descriptions, regardless of the brand, we try to be consistent across manufacturers for how we call things. So for example, anytime that we reference small block Ford, we're going to type out the word small block Ford. SBF may not work. S period, B period, F period may not work. We do have the ability to link those phrases and terms behind the scenes, and I think we've done a reasonably good job at some of the more basic ones. Part of the challenge is making sure that we understand all those relationships, so it may not be in there. Your best bet is to look through the search results to see an example of what we've called it, and then use that terminology. And if you do that, it should be very consistent across all of the manufacturer's part numbers. Okay. So now we've gotten down to a small block Ford, and let's say that we're looking for an undersize. So we'll type in the value of 0.020. And now we are limited to main bearings, small block Chevy with an undersize. Excuse me, small block Ford. Do the search, select the category if it presents itself. In this case, it does nicely. Click on it, then restrict the results by searching within a search one criteria at a time. We'll do small block Chevy this time. Okay, let's start with a new example. In this particular case, we're going to look for a piston. And we're going to select piston in pistons. We are then going to use the search within a search. And we're going to search for 4.040. It's going to give us our bore size. So we restricted it to all of the pistons that have that particular bore. And then we can put in our small block Chevy as an additional limiter. And then once we've gotten to this point, we can either search by, or we can limit or sort by brand, which this gives us the complete list of brands that are available. In cases where there's more brands in the search result than are easily displayable over on the side, so you don't have to scroll and scroll, we will, I don't remember exactly what the number is, but at some point it'll truncate it and you'll have a see all button. And you can click that and they'll pop down and you can sort through them if you don't see them. We always present these alphabetically by brand name. So if I select just DSS Racing, for example, it'll limit it down to just those part numbers. I can either clear the filter or uncheck the box to go back to all filters. You can filter more than one brand at a time, or I can use other criteria. I can sort by my price, low to high. This might be a good way to find an each piston as opposed to a set of 8 or whatever the case might be. So again, start the search, select a category, start limiting, then I can select a brand. I got one more example. I'm going to search for a guide plate in guide plates. I'm going to search for big block Chevy. And again, take a look at the descriptions to see what we've done in order to determine the terminology that is probably going to be most effective. If you're not sure, you can take a crack at it and it will probably be pretty close. but if you can find an example in the search set of what you're looking for and use the exact terminology, that is the best way to do it. I am going to now put in 5/16. And that will identify the push rod. That is the extent of my prepared conversation about search. Hopefully I've covered it in enough detail, but not too much. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to put in chat? Or if you can, oh, Waylon has his hand up, it looks like. If you have a question, you can put it in chat for me, please. Yes, the question is, will there be a video on demand of this anywhere to show coworkers? Our plan is to record all of our webinars. We'll have a webinar series where we'll have one topic a month, 2 different webinars to try to catch as many folks as we can. And we will be displaying those. My guess is that they will be displayed in the same page where we advertise them in this panel right here. If you go to the Learn More, we already have some regular just videos that we've made. This is our first webinar, so once the video for this is ready to go, it'll be displayed on this page here. Incidentally, if anybody has any requests for videos and you don't want to wait for a webinar, you're certainly welcome to contact us for one-on-one training, or we can simply prepare a video and we can put it up on YouTube and put it on this. So if you have any specific topics like that, please let us know. And again, you don't have to wait for a webinar. If you find yourself frustrated or you think something's just not working as easily as it ought to, please give us a call. Our help number is right here. It's in the help section up here in PriceGuide and inside the application itself. Or you can always email us at pgpsupport@motorstate.com. The other thing is, if you have a suggestion for the next webinar training topic, we're certainly open to talking about that. Part of our challenge is understanding how to prioritize this, what's the biggest impact for the most users in terms of explaining things. So, does anybody else have any questions? All right, well, I think we're going to end the webinar at this point. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will see you in a month.